As we wait here about a month and a half, probably the last week of June, to find out whether we still have a government of limited and enumerated powers or not. Virginia is going to be there for whatever fight comes out of there. We're going to be there again as long as I'm Attorney General. And I know that so many of you have stood with us in elections. You know, you've got critical congressional races this year. Steve King is one of my very favorite congressmen, no disrespect to any of the others, but I probably spend more time with Steve on Capitol Hill than anybody else, so sorry, Steve. But anyway, you know, our argument in this case is that the federal government does not have the authority to order you what to buy. They've never tried to order you what to buy before. They've never done that. Let me tell you just how historically unprecedented this is. You know, when we have a case like this that lawyers call a case of first impression, there's never been one like it. We go back to the beginning. We look at why they wrote this part of the Constitution the way they did and the history of it. Well, this is a Commerce Clause case. It's not a 10th Amendment case. It is, can the federal government compel you to buy a product in order to regulate you? That's what they're doing here. So we go back before the Revolutionary War, and for the 10 years before, we were boycotting British goods. Almost exactly 10 years. And during that time, there was a lot of debate, both in governors' councils in the colonies, because we were not citizens, we were subjects, and over in Parliament on the other side of the Atlantic. And the Attorney General and Solicitor General for the King at that time sat in Parliament by tradition, and they were asked, isn't this boycott by the colonists treason? Pretty important question for obvious reasons. And the answer was, the colonists have come right up to the line, but they have not crossed it. Now think about that. Flip that coin over. That's an admission that they couldn't order us to buy British goods. But we have a president who believes he can. That is how historically unprecedented this exercise of power is. King George III didn't try to do it, but Barack Obama thinks he can. And we'll see what the Supreme Court has to say about it, but America has a say in this too. And let's say we win, and the whole law is ripped out by the roots. America can't have a president who thinks he can dictate to each and every one of us what we buy and how we live, as this president believes he can, to conform with his left-wing agenda. We can't have that in America, and the only way to stop it is on November 6th. It's absolutely critical that we take that responsibility deadly seriously. And it's great to have more Republicans registered, but more have to show up. And we got 6 months to make sure they show up. And to convert more of them. You know, as we go through this case, the federal government basically argues that your decision to do nothing, to buy nothing, to not buy the product they want you to buy, is the same as economic activity. They have a little trouble with their definitions. Activity is the same as inactivity. I jokingly tease their lawyers that I think the founding father they have the most trouble with is Noah Webster. They don't appreciate that a whole lot. Well, that's okay, get right. And I'll stop teasing you about that. Obviously, the Supreme Court heard the case at the end of March. On the mandate, the federal government had one challenge when they walked into that courtroom. They had to explain to the Supreme Court something they hadn't explained anywhere else in any of the hearings up to that point. And that is, if ordering you to buy health insurance is somehow constitutionally unique, how is that power quarantined? What makes it so unique for legal purposes that they won't show up to order you to buy asparagus? I know it was good tonight, but it's asparagus. And, or to buy a health club membership, or buy a car. The legal principles are the same. You know, I have a theory. I think they're going to make you buy a GM. They got some interest in GM these days, and I actually have more particular theory about it, they're going to make you buy a Chevy Equinox. Now, I own a Chevy Equinox. You don't want to own a Chevy Equinox. And that's exactly why that's the one they're going to order you to buy. If it stops moving, subsidize it, you remember? Well, Chevy Equinox is for everyone. Hopefully not. Hopefully we won't go there. Hopefully the Supreme Court will return us to the foundational principles for the Commerce Clause and put this government back inside the constitutional box that it belongs in. We'll find out at the end of June. We'll find out at the end of June. This lawsuit is not about health care. Because if we lose, you got the cars, you got the asparagus, so it's about liberty. You can take health care and health insurance out of this bill and put cars and put food and put anything else in there, and the legal principles are the same. So the question is, does this government have this dictatorial power over your life or not? I don't think the founders, not one of them, not even Alexander Hamilton, would say yes. New Yorkers, nobody can do. But this would be extraordinary. But if we win, we have stopped the ball rolling from the New Deal. We have stopped, finally, the ever-expanding realm of government power according to the Supreme Court. There's a lot at stake when this order comes out. And there's the opportunity for a lot of great news. And we shall see. But the brazenness of this administration in overstepping these boundaries and trampling the Constitution. You know, Steve mentioned property rights in my introduction. That's something that I've worked for 8 years on. We have a constitutional amendment in Virginia this year. It took me, if we win, about 2 months short of 8 years in that effort. And I've been there every year, as the opponents will tell you. I've been beating the heck out of their knuckles with my face. I don't recommend it, but it looks like it's going to work. And when we were debating that one time, I want to say 5 years ago, the majority leader, now majority, well, no, Republicans have our Senate. We have a 2020 Senate, so I'm not quite sure how to say it. But the leader of the Democrats, how about that, stood up on the floor and said, property rights don't belong in the Constitution. Thankfully, he said it 2 days in a row. It's one of those things that you hear and you think, he didn't just say that. He didn't just say that. And he did say that. You know, a lot of people take the Constitution for granted. In Virginia, the vote to ratify the Constitution was 88 to 80. 4 votes out of 168 go the other way. No Constitution. In New York, it was 2 votes, 31-29. 1 vote goes the other way. No New York. Patrick Henry, James Monroe, that would be future President James Monroe. George Mason voted against the U.S. Constitution in Virginia's state ratifying convention because it did not protect exactly those kinds of individual rights. Ladies and gentlemen, that's what we're facing on the other side. They think the Constitution is a quaint piece of art from the 18th century. Looks nice on the wall, but we don't need to worry about it as we go about the business of governing your lives, not your government, and your society, not your government. Constitutions govern the government. At least they're supposed to. And as attorneys general, we're the last line of defense when the federal government oversteps those boundaries. When there aren't enough folks in Washington to rein in the federal government, or they're not committed enough to rein in the federal government, and we've had both, and we've had Republicans in this category, then it falls to states to push back, and we are pushing back. But it's a defensive position. You know, we need cavalry. That's what November 6th is about. We need to get back on offense. We need to start shrinking this government, not shrinking the increase, shrinking the government.